Long ago, in the blazing heart of ancient Egypt, a new pharaoh rose to power, one who forgot Joseph and all the kindness Israel had brought to his land. The city bustled with life, golden sunlight glinting off the Nile, but beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Pharaoh, draped in regal linen, gazed out over his kingdom, his eyes narrowing as he watched the Israelites multiply. He remembered stories of Joseph, the Hebrew who had once saved Egypt from famine, but those days were gone. Now suspicion and fear crept into his heart. Watching the Israelites grow in number, Pharaoh grew fearful. His answer? He forced them into slavery. The sound of hammers and chisels echoed through the air as the Israelites, once honored guests, became the backbone of Egypt's grand monuments. Pharaoh's advisors whispered warnings in his ear. If war breaks out, these people might join our enemies. Determined to keep control, Pharaoh issued a decree: make their work harder. Let them build our cities, Pithom and Ramses. Let them sweat under the sun. Day after day the Israelites toiled, building pyramids, whipped and beaten, their cries echoing across the desert. The overseers showed no mercy. "Faster!" they shouted, their whips cracking in the air. The Israelites' hands bled, their backs ached, but still they endured. At night, families huddled together, whispering prayers for deliverance. Children clung to their mothers, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. The desert winds carried their laments, but Pharaoh's heart remained unmoved. But Pharaoh's cruelty didn't stop there. He ordered every Hebrew baby boy to be thrown into the Nile. The river, once a symbol of life, became a place of terror. Egyptian soldiers stormed Hebrew homes, searching for newborns. Mothers wept as their babies were torn from their arms. The Nile's gentle current carried away the cries of the innocent, and the people's hope seemed to fade with every sunrise. But hope never dies that easily. In the darkest moments, a spark of courage can ignite a revolution. Among the reeds, a mother's resolve shone brighter than the morning sun. She refused to surrender her child to Pharaoh's decree. One desperate mother hid her newborn, placing him in a basket on the river. That baby? His name was Moses. She lined the basket with pitch and tar, her hands trembling as she set it among the reeds. She watched, heart pounding, as the current carried her son away, praying that God would protect him. Moses' sister Miriam hid nearby, her eyes never leaving the basket as it drifted down the Nile. Against all odds, Pharaoh's own daughter found him. She raised Moses as her son, a Hebrew, right under the king's nose. The princess, moved by the baby's cries, drew him from the water. "This must be one of the Hebrews' children," she said softly. She named him Moses, drawn out of the water. Moses grew up in the palace, learning the ways of Egypt, but his heart never forgot his people. But as a young man, Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. In a fury, Moses struck and killed the attacker. The act was swift, born of righteous anger. Moses looked around, hoping no one had seen, but word spread quickly. The next day he tried to break up a fight between two Hebrews. "Who made you ruler and judge over us?" they sneered. "Are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Fearing for his life, Moses ran. He left behind the only home he'd ever known, crossing the burning sands into exile. The desert stretched endlessly before him, a place of silence and solitude. Each step took him farther from Egypt, but closer to his destiny. For 40 years, he vanished into the wilderness. Moses became a shepherd, tending flocks in the land of Midian. The days were long, the nights cold and lonely. He married Zipporah, the daughter of a Midianite priest, and started a family. Yet, in the quiet of the desert, Moses often gazed at the stars, wondering if he would ever see his people again. The years passed, and the pain of his past faded, but the call of destiny lingered in his heart. One day, Moses saw a bush blazing with fire, but it didn't burn up. The sight was mesmerizing, a supernatural flame that defied nature. Moses drew closer, curiosity and awe battling within him. The air shimmered with heat, yet the bush remained untouched. Stepping closer, he heard a voice from the flames. "Moses, take off your sandals. You're standing on holy ground." Moses fell to his knees, trembling. The voice was powerful yet gentle, echoing through the stillness of the desert. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." God had seen his people's pain, and he chose Moses to set them free. Moses was terrified, but God promised, "I will be with you. Tell them, I am has sent you." Moses protested, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh? What if they don't believe me?" But God gave him signs, a staff that turned into a snake, a hand that became leprous and was healed. "Go, God said. I will teach you what to say. So, with nothing but faith and his brother Aaron by his side, Moses returned to Egypt and faced Pharaoh himself. The palace was grand, filled with columns and gold, but Moses stood tall, his resolve unshaken. Aaron spoke for him, his voice echoing through the hall. The Lord, the God of Israel, says, "Let my people go." Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, "Let my people go." The words rang out bold and uncompromising. Pharaoh's court fell silent, all eyes on the foreigner who dared challenge the king. But Pharaoh laughed. "Who is the Lord that I should obey him? I will not let Israel go." His advisors nodded, emboldened by their king's defiance. "Double their workload," Pharaoh commanded. "Let them gather their own straw for bricks, but demand the same quota." The Israelites groaned under the weight of impossible demands, their hope flickering like a candle in the wind. And so, God unleashed his power. 10 plagues, 10 warnings, each one a message. Let my people go or face the consequences. The Nile, lifeblood of Egypt, turned to blood. Fish died, the river stank, and the people could not drink its water. But Pharaoh's magicians mimicked the miracle, and Pharaoh's heart grew harder still. The Nile turned to blood. Frogs swarmed every home. They leapt into beds, ovens, and kneading bowls. The people cried out, but Pharaoh would not yield. When the frogs died, the land reeked with their decay. Gnats and flies tormented the land. Livestock died, boils broke out, hail battered the fields, locusts devoured everything green, and darkness swallowed Egypt for 3 days. The plagues grew worse. Swarms of gnats filled the air, biting and stinging. Flies invaded every home, spreading disease. The livestock in the fields fell dead, and boils erupted on the skin of man and beast alike. Hail rained down, shattering crops and trees, followed by locusts that devoured what little remained. Then a darkness so thick it could be felt covered Egypt for 3 days. No one moved, fear gripped the land, and darkness swallowed Egypt for 3 days. The city that once gleamed with sunlight now lay in utter blackness. People stumbled through their homes, unable to see even their own hands. Only in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, was there light. Still, Pharaoh's heart remained like stone. He summoned Moses and Aaron, pleading for relief. But as soon as the plague lifted, he broke his promise. "You may go," he said, but then changed his mind. The cycle repeated, each time Pharaoh's heart growing colder. Then came the final plague. The air was thick with dread as midnight approached. Egyptian families clung to one another, sensing that something terrible was about to happen. In the palace, Pharaoh paced restlessly, haunted by the warnings of Moses. At midnight, God said, every Egyptian firstborn would die, from Pharaoh's own son to the child of the lowest slave. The angel of death swept through Egypt. Cries of anguish rose from every home. Pharaoh's own son, his pride and joy, lay lifeless in his arms. The king's wails echoed through the palace, mingling with the grief of his people. But God gave the Israelites a way out, a perfect lamb, its blood painted on their doors. That night, death passed over every home marked by the blood. The Israelites gathered in their homes, eating roasted lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They waited in silence, trusting in God's promise. As the angel of death passed by, their homes were spared. Egypt was filled with grief. Finally, Pharaoh broke. "Go! Leave Egypt! Take your people and go!" The Israelites packed their belongings in haste, their hearts pounding with hope and fear. Egyptian neighbors, desperate to see them gone, pressed gold and silver into their hands. "Take it," they pleaded. "Just leave us in peace." 400 years of slavery ended in a single night. The Israelites marched out of Egypt, a vast multitude of men, women, and children. They carried their unleavened bread on their shoulders, their eyes fixed on the horizon. The night sky blazed with stars, and a pillar of cloud led them on their journey. The people of Israel marched out, free at last. Songs of joy rose from their lips, mingling with the desert wind. Children laughed, elders wept tears of relief, and families embraced. For the first time in generations, hope was real. But Pharaoh wasn't finished. He chased them with his armies, trapping them at the Red Sea. The thunder of chariot wheels shook the earth. The Israelites looked back in terror, their escape blocked by the sea ahead and Pharaoh's army behind. "Why did you bring us here to die?" they cried to Moses. But Moses stood firm, his faith unshaken. Israel walked through on dry ground. When Pharaoh's army followed, the sea crashed back, sweeping them away. Moses stretched out his staff, and the waters parted, forming walls on either side. The Israelites hurried across, the ground beneath their feet miraculously dry. As the last of them reached the far shore, Moses raised his staff again. The waters thundered back, swallowing Pharaoh's chariots and horsemen. Not one survived. On the far shore, Israel sang and danced, free at last. Miriam, Moses' sister, led the women in song, tambourines ringing out in celebration. "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea." The people rejoiced, their voices rising in a chorus of gratitude. God had delivered his people with a mighty hand. The Israelites looked back at the sea, awestruck by the miracle they had witnessed. They knew that their freedom was not won by their own strength but by the power of the God who had heard their cries. Remember, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. As the sun rose over the desert, Moses stood in silent prayer, his heart full of gratitude and awe. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but the people knew they were not.